Imagine the person you love most in the world. You've been married for 23 years. You know the exact cadence of their breathing. Now, imagine standing in a freezing stone barn at midnight, holding onto their waist with everything you have, while their body is being physically pulled into a tear in the fabric of the universe. This is not a ghost story. This is the story of a trap. And the worst part? It took them 3 months to realize they were already standing inside it. You are pulling her back, but she isn't fighting to escape it. She is trying to step inside. The thing in the corner is older than the stone, colder than the winter, and it is hungry. And if you let go, she will not simply die. She will be unmade. Cairn Farm sits at the end of a dead lane, miles from anywhere that matters. For 11 years, it was a quiet retirement for Martin and Ellen. 12 acres, 6 hens, and a vegetable plot. They were intensely practical people. Martin was a printer, Ellen worked in school administration. They were the kind of people who solved problems with a cup of tea and a toolbox. They didn't believe in the supernatural. They believed in drafts, foxes, and loose hinges. Which is why, when Ellen saw the heavy oak door of the barn shift entirely on its own in the dead, windless air of January, they didn't panic. Martin checked the hinges. He blamed the frost. He blamed the light. He possessed that rare, enviable trait of being able to set a worry down and simply walk away from it. But Ellen kept watching the door. A week later, Ellen saw a woman in a pale dress walk into the barn. When they investigated, it was completely empty, but a wooden milking stool had been moved to the dead center of the room, positioned deliberately, like an invitation. By February, the farm began to sour. It started with the silence. It wasn't empty anymore. It had a texture. At 2 a.m., they would hear heavy, deliberate dragging from the barn's loft. They investigated with flashlights. Nothing was there, except in the thick dust of the upper floorboards, the fresh handprint of a small child. There were no children for miles. Then came the physical toll. Martin's hands began to swell. The joints turned a dark, bruised violet. Every movement became agony. The doctor called it an aggressive inflammatory response, but medication did nothing. Ellen's vision began to fracture. She saw movements in her periphery, rectangles of pure, self-contained darkness that vanished when she looked directly at them. They tried to fight it with logic. They called a vicar who offered empty prayers at the threshold. It only made the entity angry. The next morning, 4 new handprints appeared. And then, Martin found the drawings, hidden in the back of an old workbench drawer, dated November 1943, signed by Arthur Pell, the farmer who owned the land before vanishing without a trace. 9 drawings, 9 doorways. Arthur had seen the exact same thing, right before he disappeared. But here's the most terrifying detail. As the weeks dragged on, the barn stopped feeling frightening. Instead, Ellen felt a profound, irresistible pull. When she stood inside it, the air felt warm, heavy, deeply peaceful. She heard a low, rhythmic sound that was almost like music. It felt like a sanctuary. It felt like an old friend waiting in the dark. In nature, this is how the pitcher plant hunts. It secretes sweet nectar, lulling the insect into a state of docile bliss, right up until the moment it slips over the edge and into the acid. The barn was not a haunted house. It was an anglerfish, and its light was on. It's the second Saturday in April, 10 p.m. Without speaking, Martin and Ellen put on their coats and walk into the barn. Tonight, The illusion drops. The darkness in the far corner doesn't just sit there. It gathers. It condenses like a storm cloud, refining its edges until a shape forms. It isn't a door of wood or iron. It is a tear in the physical air, a hole leading to an endless, crushing depth. And the veil of peace Ellen had felt for months instantly evaporates. She finally sees what is on the other side. It isn't a place. It is a thing that contains places. An apex predator of cosmic proportions. And its appetite is absolute. The ghosts they saw, the woman in the pale dress, Arthur Pell, they were just lures on the hook. The pull is gravitational. Ellen's mind completely surrenders. Her body moves toward the void against her own will. The cold hits her chest, an absolute absence of life. She begins to scream involuntarily, her voice stripping down to primal terror. And that is when Martin grabs her. He throws his entire weight backward. His ruined hands, already in blinding pain from months of proximity to the entity, are pushed past the limit of human endurance. It is a tug of war with a god. For 3 agonizing seconds, they hang in perfect, terrible equilibrium. And then with a scream that tears his throat, Martin breaks the lever. They collapse onto the stone. Behind them, the tear in reality closes with a soft exhale. The barn is just a barn again, smelling of old straw and freezing air. They survive. The physical wounds begin to heal. But then comes the hardest decision of their lives. Any sane person would pack their bags, sell the farm, and run. But Ellen realizes a horrifying truth. If they sell Cairn Farm, someone else will move in. Someone else will notice the door. Someone else will feel the peaceful draw of the corner. And they won't have Martin to pull them back. So they stay. They condemn themselves to a life on the edge of the abyss. Every night, as the cold sets in, Martin takes his chair by the window. He listens to the rhythmic, patient thumping from across the yard. He watches the heavy chains. He keeps watch. He will keep watch for the rest of his life. Because this isn't a farm anymore. It is a cage, and they are the keepers.